What's up, everyone? This is Jeff with the Overwatch team. Very exciting developer update today because in the last developer update, I mentioned that we would be bringing you something very special, which we call the experimental card. Well, we are now on the eve of the experimental card going live. And that's to say that if everything goes correctly, tomorrow we'll have the first version of the experimental card up, and all of you, including everybody on console, will get to play our first experimental modes and test things that we're really unsure about, and that's why they're going to you. I want to remind everybody that the experimental card is not targeted at bug fixing or stability or anything like that. The experimental card is really focused on radical gameplay changes or things that we want to try out and get your direct player feedback on. So the first version of the experimental card that goes live hopefully tomorrow. Now, as I said, stuff could go wrong, so maybe it gets delayed a little bit, but hopefully tomorrow this card will go up, and we are going to be testing something that I actually mentioned in a forum post for those of you who are paying attention back in January. That was a change to the roll queue system. Now, I don't want to panic everybody, and I want to remind you that these are really experimental changes. We are unsure of these. That's why we're not patching them live. That's why they're not on the PTR. This is just an experiment that we're trying. So the change to roll queue that we're going to be trying on the experimental card tomorrow is one in which it changes the number of rolls and restrictions to those rolls such that we will have 1 tank, 3 damage, and 2 support players. So obviously this shifts off of the current roll queue, which is 2-2-2. Now, you might be wondering, why are you trying this change? And I think the why is the most important thing behind any design decision. So the impetus for this was a discussion we were having months ago. In fact, we were having this in, I think it was November or December of last year, where we were talking about how do we make damage queue times faster. As many of you know, when we introduced roll queue, which is a system we think is very successful and has overall been a positive change to the game, it added some extra queue time for those players who were playing damage. And one of the ideas that we started to experiment with internally was 3 damage players being available to each match instead of 2. This was a lot of fun. It was very controversial on the development team. We had very strong reactions for and against this system. And ultimately, at around the same time, we had also mentioned to you that we were going to do this experimental card. I made that post on the forums, and so many players said, well, why don't you let us try it? So this is your chance. You can test out one of the wacky things that we've tried. What we are going to be looking for as the experimental card is up is we are going to be looking for the effects to the queue times to see if it actually makes a difference to damage queue times. And we'll be tracking statistics very closely and seeing how it affects not only the queue times within the experimental card, but how that fans out to the rest of the service, including quick play, competitive, and the different modes in the arcade, in particular Quick Play Classic. So we want to see what queue times are like, and that's what the development team is looking for. We're also looking for your feedback because this is a radical change. There's a lot different here. As I had mentioned in that forum post a few, I guess it was like a month ago at this point, the biggest concern we have with this change and why we were reluctant to make this one is we're very concerned about what this does to what players have come to call off tanks, specifically Roadhog, Zarya, and Diva. What you are also going to see on the experimental card, in addition to the change to the queuing ratio, you're going to see big balance changes to these heroes. Now, don't freak out. These balance changes are not intended to make it to the live game unless we were to put the 3-2-1 system out there. Under our normal 2-2-2 roll queue, we would never make balance changes like this. But this is a look into what happens if we decide to make Roadhog the only tank in the match, or if we decide to make Diva the only tank in the match, you are going to have some insight into the type of balance changes that we would need to make. So we really want to hear from you. We want to hear from tank players. We want to hear from non-tank players. We're going to be looking at the damage queue times and seeing if the experiment's actually fixing the problem that it's trying to solve. One thing that's really cool about the experimental card, and I want to remind you all of, is that when you queue up for matches in the experimental card, you'll still be leveling your account. So that means if you get another level, you'll still get your loot box reward. And if there is an event going on simultaneous to the experimental card being up, the example I'll use is like Summer Games or our Halloween event, you will still be getting credit towards those epic skin unlocks like you normally do. So I think that will be very cool, and there might be some event surprises coming your way while this experimental card is up. So just remember, you're getting rewarded for testing out new and cool things. And I can't say this last thing enough. Don't panic when you see this card go up. These are changes we are unsure of, and that's why we're getting your feedback on them. It doesn't mean that they're imminently coming to Overwatch anytime soon. It just helps you get some insight into what we're focused on and some of our design process. So we hope you enjoy the experimental card when it goes live. We're looking forward to hearing all of your feedback. And as always, thanks for playing Overwatch, and thanks for being such a great part of our community.